Picking up the phone is one of the best things you can learn to do. You and I could be accidental successes. IBM have announced that they want to increase more graduates. And then you've got AI, which is also disrupting your world. You don't need ITV or Channel 4. You know, we've got lots of content creators and people are buying up. AI opens up huge opportunities. What's interesting about Gen Alpha is also that they've started their own side hustles. So they're interacting with the financial system at a much younger age.
Derek, welcome to the Global Roundtable podcast. This is a very personal one for me. We first met in 2001 when I was a 17-year-old, still at school. I then became an intern at Merrill Lynch, and since then you've been a mentor, a good friend, and an occasional source of very good advice. Your career has taken in Barings Bank, Merrill Lynch, trading, international athletics, music, entrepreneurship, and more recently, you're working with young people in Entrepreneurs in Action. So today I want to cover that full journey, the bigger themes behind it, your ambition, the reinvention from being a banker to someone who helps, young people, and whether the institutions built by our generation you think still make sense to young people today, especially Gen Z, Gen Alpha. So look, great to have you here. Can we start with Barings Bank? You tell us a bit about that and how you got going.
Okay, well, Nick, thank you first for the invitation. It's very, it's quite surreal sitting here in Dad's flat and just doing this interview. So, yeah, to the big man up there, who's watching us and smiling.
Yeah.
So great. Barings was interesting. I joined Barings in the late 80s, 89, I think. I think it was a very interesting experience. So firstly, I had 9 interviews to get a job there. And I was determined to get a job at Barings. So in preparation for the 9 interviews, or preparation for the interviews, I learned there were 5 directors, 25 quotes per director. And so I had 125 quotes in my head. I knew everything about the Japanese equity warrant market. And I remember the 9th interview, the deputy chairman sat me down and he said, asked me various questions, but he asked me one particular question. He said, Derek Browne, what's your thoughts on the Japanese equity warrant market? And I said, Mr. Kelly, as you said on page 27 of Financial Times, 28th of March, 1989. And I quoted him and he said, Mr. Browne, nobody's ever quoted me at interview. And he said, can you make me money? And I said, Mr. Kelly, I can make you money. And he said, can you take SH1T? And I said, oh yes, I could take SH1T. And that went on for a little bit. And he said, but can you really take it? And I said, yeah. So I got a job then and became a trainee trader at Barings. And it was a very interesting experience for me, having gone to college in Lambeth, to then be in the City of London on a trading floor where diversity was very different. It was some desks you were ranked by what public independent school you went to. So Ampleforth and Wellington, I've forgotten the other school, were mainly on this desk. Then the Eton and Harrow guys were on this desk over here. And then they had the lesser public schools. I wouldn't call Hampton one of the lesser ones, but
it is. Yeah.
And they were dotted around. And so I found that really interesting because I've never come across people not in person, who'd gone to schools like that. And then the next level down, you had a lot of people from the East End of London. So there was Canning Town person, Bermondsey person, they were very similar. And then there was the Essex man, which I'd never come across Essex man before either. So that was very interesting. But what was missing on the trading floor was anybody from South London. So I think I was one of the few people from South London. And then what became quite apparent during my journey to actually becoming a trader is that before me, there hadn't been anybody who looked like me actually as a trainee, considering that bank opened up in 1878. So it was a really interesting journey. And I qualified as a market maker and went on to be trading and Japanese equities as well. And then I moved from trading to sales, and I was running a sales Mark Lira desk by the time I left Barings.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you combined it with your international sport career as well, right?
Yeah. And sadly, Nick, it's a hot day. I would normally be wearing a tight-fitting T-shirt, but unfortunately, these things fit me more tightly now. So I got my jacket on, but I did athletics. I was quite a good athlete, maybe about 6 stone ago.
Yeah.
And so, so that was athletics. So I think I was able to combine being on the trading floor, working then 6:30, 7 o'clock to 6, 7, and then training in the evening. And I've always been quite determined, and I set myself the target of, 1, being a trader, but 2, could I become an international athlete? And I was able to, whilst trading, became an international athlete and won the odd medal to county, national, and European level.
Amazing.
So so it was good. And you need to be strong and tough on the trading floor. So I think, I was well equipped with training 6 days a week for that as well.
So do you think the pressure in the athletics helped you at the bank?
On the floor, it reminded me of being at school, because we were it was quite an aggressive time. So you had some very interesting types. So if you understood psychology, not necessarily, I wouldn't say bullying, but you've got a lot of guys on the floor, a lot of energy, testosterone there.
Pecking order.
Yeah. And so you've got to be able to stand up for yourself. And I think being able to stand up for yourself is great. But when somebody puts their arm on you and they think, oh, he's quite a strong lad, doesn't he? Then I'm not really going to push it too much, because it does feel like he's benching 120K. So, we're going to have a conversation. So I think it was it was great that I did the sport. And also it gave me a different profile on the floor, in that I was seen as somebody that the bank wanted to promote, because I was an international athlete. When I was being written about in the newspapers or television, it was a great source of pride.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, I started the Barings athletics team, which we became very successful. We became the only first. I think we broke the record for the Stock Exchange Athletics Championship.
Really?
And won that twice on the trot. And in 1 year, we won the Interbank Championship and beat the likes of Barclays, Lloyds, and NatWest, which they got really upset about, because I did about 9 events.
Yeah.
Which
Everything.
it was like, but we won the trophy, and that was a big, when we came back to the trading floor with the trophy, everybody was going ballistic, and Sir Christopher Heap was the chair, and he was like, we are Barings, we own the market, yes.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so it was really great fun. So I managed to sort of, interweave the experience of the athletics on the trading floor, bring us together as a team, a motley crew of, fags being put down before the start line and running.
Yeah.
But, we were really a really competitive team then. So I really enjoyed being part of the team.
Oh, amazing. And obviously your time at Barings, it wasn't that long, was it, right? But it did cross over with the famous Nick Leeson, didn't it?
Yeah, so I was there 6 years. And I met...
The time with Nick, though, it was
Yeah, so I'm getting it there. Thank you, Nick. So Nick, and the question about Nick Leeson's interesting. So to get on the trading floor at Barings, they, they had some strange traditions, but one of the traditions was setting a really difficult task that maybe it's a 6 or 7 month task, but you were given 6 or 7 weeks, but you did it with a partner, and my partner was Nick on that. So we got to know each other reasonably well. And I remember we had to hand the project in on the Friday, and it was about maybe 1:00 in the morning, 1:30, when we finished it. And I just remember I was just going like this, up and down, and Nick had his big sty on his eye. And we walked into Richard, the head trader's office, and just said, we've done the project. And he just went, okay, that's good. Browne, you're over there, and Leeson, you're over there. And he didn't look at it. But the point was, can you work with somebody? Can you work under pressure? And if you can, nobody's gonna blag that he didn't do it to the head trader, right? So it's like, okay, you guys have done it, great. There you go. And that was the start. So I knew Nick relatively well for that period. Then just before he went to Singapore, we were both on a cheeky weekend in Paris. And I remember coming up the Eiffel Tower escalator and him going down and seeing him with Lisa, and we stopped for a bit of a conversation at the top. But then that was the last time I saw him. And then I spoke to him, I think about 6 months before the bank went down, because people were talking about this superstar trader out in Singapore. And I was like, well, who's this? And they said, it's Nick Leeson. I was phoning him. I said, Nicholas, is that you? He said, oh, yeah. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah.
So it was February the 25th when the bank, I think it was 25th, 95.
Was it 95? Yeah, I do remember watching it on BBC News.
Yeah.
12 years old. Wow, what a day. And they tried frantically to try and save it, right? For 12 hours or something, was it?
Yeah. I won't repeat the conversation I had with my director on screen, but that's one for a glass of wine.
Yeah.
But no, they did. And it was really sad, actually. But, it happened, and the famous Barings Bank disappeared.
Wow. So what did your time at Barings teach you about sort of risk in big institutions? Because you feel like that would be more difficult today. I know we had Silicon Valley Bank, didn't we, 2 years ago? And that scared the hell out of me, because one of my funds had all its money with Silicon Valley Bank,
Wow.
Luckily, it got rescued by HSBC.
Yeah.
But, it's just a world, it's a warning to all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think from a trading perspective, we saw it with a few traders in that time, and sort of 5 to 7 years after, was that you had the star trader mentality, where there was a star trader who made lots of money and people backed him. And I think with Nick, his boss was an Australian gentleman who ran debt financial products, and DFP made 1/3 of Barings' profits that year, of which a big chunk of that was coming out of Singapore. So, Nick would have got his bonus on this level, but Ron, who's running, gets an even much bigger bonus and has more say within the organisation. So I think that what's changed now is more checks and balances, and more controls around how liquidity and capital adequacy rules manage how people risk money. But I'm sure, and now we're in the world of AI, where there is a trader who wants to be a rogue trader, they will work a way around actually getting around the system. And, I thought Nick's done very well with speaking to people, going around telling people what not to do. So, he's made a whole business of helping people not to do a Nick Leeson.
Like the Jordan Belfort thing, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You sell people courses on what not to do.
Well, I know he's still, I don't know, still mostly in demand as a public speaker and all the rest of it. As I say. Yeah, so good luck to him.
And from Barings to Merrill's, how did that happen?
So that was interesting. So at Merrill's, I met a guy who was a MD at Merrill's, but he was previously managing director at Goldman Sachs, a guy called James Curry. And he was an American footballer and was on track to be the first black partner at Goldman's. And I was in awe of him because, being an ex-athlete, for somebody in the industry and then being that successful in the business was really interesting to see. And I got a call from him out of the blue just saying, would you want to meet for a coffee? And he just said, look, I've been watching you, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go continue trading. He said, no, I think you'll be better off in wealth management. I think, you're a good personality. Why don't you have a chat with Merrill Lynch? And so that's how I started speaking to Merrill Lynch, and originally joined to sort of lead that sort of UK sports, business, entertainment. That's where I started. And that was interesting start to the journey.
Yeah. And obviously Merrill's later, of course, a long time after you left, failed as well, didn't it? It got taken out for what, 2 cents in the dollar?
Yeah. They did get taken out, and I was just thinking, I'm not going to join another bank.
Yeah.
But they got taken out 2008 crisis.
So obviously I was a little, intern in my late teens when I joined. What do you remember about Merrill Lynch back then? Because it was quite a fun place to work in 2005, 6, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, it was. And if I think I want to go back, if I may, Nick, to how I got introduced to you.
Yeah, sure.
If that's okay, because we were looking after Paul with Dad at the time, and I remember him at the end of one of the meetings just saying, Derek, would you just hang on a bit so I can talk to you on my own? And so everybody shuffled out thinking, what's Paul doing talking to Derek? And he says, you could take a seat. And I sat down, and I was thinking, is he leaving? What's happening? Or does he want me to be part of the team? I don't know. And he said, Derek, I'd like you to talk to my son. And I said, oh, yeah, I think you do with your input. And so he gave me your home number. And I remember calling up, and Nick was doing his best Ali G impression on the phone.
Yeah, very true. The voicemail. Terrible.
And I said, Paul, I hear where you're coming from, Paul. I'll meet up with him. So it was respect to the applicants.
Yeah. No, exactly, yeah.
So we met when you were 17 and you came into the office, and I remember saying to you, do you fancy going for a drink? And I think before I said fancy going for, you said yes. So we're in the bar, and I think a couple of guys came across, and then I realised that this was not your first visit to the pub at 17. So we had a few drinks, and that's how we started our conversations, our relationship, and and I felt really, I felt quite honoured that Paul would think that he would trust me to work with you and support you through what was a very interesting part of your journey and the friendship that we developed as a result of that. But I that was really good for Paul to do that. And I think Merrill's was, it was a very competitive place. It was competitive. We were very focused on looking after our clients, but I didn't see working with a young Nick Atherton as a client assignment, although sometimes I felt like a client assignment. Yeah. But it was good fun. But I think that team, what made us a really good team, we're very client focused, and service focused, and really relationships. And I think out of that relationship, having a relationship both with your dad and yourself for many years, beyond Merrill Lynch, it just shows the quality of doing great business, but being human when you're doing it, and honest. when you're doing it. And I think your dad was very much about honesty and transparency. And that's something I always tried to do my best when I was getting the Mr. A grilling, which he's very good at. So yeah, and I think when you came as an intern, you were a very good intern, you know, surprisingly good actually. And I repeat that, surprisingly good.
Yeah,
Because you worked really hard, and your personality fitted in with the team, and people really liked you. And I thought, you know, this young guy's got something, and I said that to your dad. I said, oh, he's but I said, you know, he's got something.
Yeah,
and you did, and I think we treated you really, really well, and I think that also beyond Merrill's that work experience, we then spoke about when you got your first role and the introduction to the recruitment company as well.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so it was really good to just be around. It's like quality relationships, and you know the wealth management business, ultra high net worth business is about quality, deep relationships, and you know what we were able to do is build that up. Even though you were quite young at the time, you always had that focus and determination to do the best you can.
But like that help you gave me when I was 18, 19, 20 was invaluable. And you know, those things get you going, don't they? They propel you along. And it's great to see we have it at Morphos and Panacea. We get interns every summer. I think we've got 5 or 6 this summer.
Oh, wow.
Maybe a bit too many. But you know, 1 or 2 you probably never hear from again, but you know, most of them keep in touch. You see how their career develops. Some even stay long term and work with you. And that's great, right?
It is. And I think what you were able to demonstrate quite early on is that stickiness of keeping in touch. And, you know, we had some horrible kids. Merrill, some really entitled, I won't repeat, what, you know, but to be 1, nice, 2, be hardworking, and 3, be thoughtful about keeping in touch with people, which you still do, is down to Mr. A, Mrs. A, how you were brought up, right? But the person that you have to take the responsibility to be who you are, and you've taken the best out of that and not done too badly.
Do my best. So what advice would you give to an 18-year-old these days? You know, your daughter's 18, mine's coming up to 18. What would you like advice do you give them to how would you break into finance or entrepreneurship like you've done in business? Because it's such a different world. It's, you know, evolving even weekly, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I don't try and give my children advice because I think the phrase is, it's not a learning moment, Dad.
Yeah.
So I'll try not to give too much advice, failing, or they say, Dad, don't try your coaching stuff from me. I'm thinking, okay, all right. So generally, what do I think? I think AI is disruptive, and it's disruptive to now and what the future of work looks like. And I think if I was 18 or giving advice to an 18-year-old, the concept of lifelong learning is a real thing, because even with AI now, we're seeing various iterations of generative AI. We're seeing agentic AI emerging. There are another 2 types of AI that will emerge over time. And why AI is both difficult for individuals as it is for businesses is that it's a bit like, you know, skiing, in that when you're skiing down a mountain to catch up with the guys who are ahead of you, you catch up and you say, right, and they say, right, we're going again. You think, okay. And that's how I see AI. It's just like it's moving quickly. So young people have they're more digital native than us, and that's a plus. But what they've got to do for me is really buckle down and be constantly learning, and that constant learning and appreciation of learning will give them the best tools to work and be employed, or how they use it for their business side hustle or whatever.
But it's not easy to point them in the direction that you would have pointed me in, is it? In the same way that, you know, get some work experience, you get a good degree.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's a different game now? Because that's how I feel.
Well, look, I think you've still got to do the work experience. Everybody, you know, wants work experience. We're doing a big program for one of the big banks at the moment, and the prerequisite is work experience. And so you're a graduate graduating 26, 27. In the old days, you didn't need work experience, right? In the competitive days now, people are looking at what internships you've done.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into banking, really competitive areas, you have to demonstrate some sort of work experience, some sort of passion for that industry. And I don't think that has really changed, but it's just become far more competitive.
Yeah.
And, you and I could be accidental successes. You know, I joined the city. It wasn't planned by my family to go into the city of London. You know, you could get in via, somebody who learns 125 quotes and you get your break. Now, with my academic qualifications, I would never, I may get to be the post room, but I wouldn't get to be on the trading floor because we're recruiting by numbers, number of A stars at GCSE, number of A stars at A level. Is it a first? Is it a 2-1? If you've got a Desmond, you're not going to stand a chance, mate. So it's really different. So I think that academic stuff, we still need to study until AI makes universities, really disrupts it. And I don't know when that will happen. But young people still need to study, in my eyes, and they still need to work the network when they've got one to get into roles if you can. And you can't do everything. So what do you want to do? And apply yourself. So I still think that a lot of the old values still exist in terms of how you get a job. And, that's, my observation. But the competition's intense and it's international.
Yeah. So maybe there's less jobs, right, as well.
Less jobs, and with AI, more people, more. So some firms are aggressively looking at cutting down on early careers, and some are looking at reducing, and some are looking at increasing number of young people. The IBM have announced that they want to increase more graduates. So I think people are finding their way, but the winners around AI for me are the businesses that work out that with AI, it's not necessarily shrinking the business, but how do you 5x your employee, 10x your employee with AI, which then impacts profits and growth in the same way.
Yeah, because where do the next set of lawyers come from if we don't train them up? Where do the next set of bankers come from? Where do the next set of teachers? I mean, you have to train them up.
Absolutely. So I think the pyramid was very wide in its base. I think it's decreasing, but we still got to have a pyramid.
Yeah.
Because people will still retire. You need to bring these young people up, train them. Otherwise, you won't have a business, right? And so that's a challenge. And I think it's a real challenge for leadership because it's not easy, and you've really got to think quite hard around how you use the technology, how you compete with your competitors, and how you grow at the same time.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. So this summer, the interns come in at Morphos, and, what used to take my former intern, Eve Kilgour, and I 3 months in the British Library with a DVD saving things onto a hard drive and all the rest of it. Now, compiling a list of, say, 1,000 target companies for an M&A sell side pitch from us, that took less than 10 minutes on AI the other day. Wow. So I've done, as I said, I'll explain to them when they come in next week. We've already packed your lunch for you,
Yeah.
but we still need you to reach out to them.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? Because
Yeah.
a business owner doesn't just want to get a spam email.
No.
They still want a nice phone call.
Absolutely.
They still prefer a nice brochure or a letter or a thoughtful message on LinkedIn or an appointment via their secretary.
Yeah.
And if you just spam them, and we all get spam more than ever,
absolutely,
you won't get anything back.
And this is my point, Nick, picking up the phone is one of the best things you can learn to do.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend of mine, his son's got a sales job, he's a top graduate, and I said to him, learn sales, mate, do 6 months of sales training, you can't go wrong. And coming back to your earlier question, what would I say to Gabriella or I would say, we've got to do 3 months, 6 months in sales.
Yeah.
Answering the phone, making those phone calls. It's a really different level of confidence.
Totally.
And so, as you say, you can't get away from it. That.
Yeah, I think the first job they gave me at Rockpools, the recruitment, was to phone 500 councils and find out if they'd replaced their chief information officer or not, or they needed help from us. I could not believe a list of 500. But actually, when you get in it, you can do 100 a day.
Yeah.
You can.
Absolutely.
And once you're on a roll, you're away, aren't you?
No, definitely. And it's all mindset, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all mindset. You look at something that's quite difficult and the activity or task does not shout to you, say, I'm very difficult.
No.
Right? Your brain says, oh, that's really difficult to do, But as I'm sure you wanted another 500 calls to make after that. But, and then what did you get from that? What did you take away from that?
We landed one job from 500, which was a 14 grand fee.
You're right, okay.
And that was more than they'd pay me by probably a factor of 10. And I realised I could probably do this myself.
Yeah.
And make money myself. I think that's what it taught me better than anything.
Good.
I was amazed by it, to be honest. 14 grand in 2005 was, you couldn't believe it, right?
No.
Especially when you're on a little £8 an hour work experience kid.
Yeah. But again, it's like getting that opportunity when we spoke about, where the first role would be. We had the conversation. Again, it was like good to learn a bit about sales and people. And I remember where you went from that to set up on your own. But again, it's just having that base, really important. And, we can all be different types of salespeople, but every salesperson's got to pick up the phone.
Yeah, totally right. Entrepreneurs in action and young people. So how did you move from banking to working with young people? Because, it was a pretty significant change in sort of mid-2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was interesting. I think it's really easy to be caught up in the day-to-day world of banking targets. It's a very different life. You're caught up in your own bubble. I think I just got to a stage where I was just reflecting how, what happens to people like me at school, where you feel that you failed school, but in fact the system's failed you. And I quite madly, and I reflected it, thought that I could change British education by bringing more entrepreneurial education, more education which focused on developing business mindset. And, I've got a bit of an addictive personality, and I just thought, this is something I could do. And then I think when you start working with young people and supporting them, it's very addictive because you're making a difference. And I've kind of had like a purpose calling to do that, and I really enjoyed it. And, we've worked with young people across the UK, different parts of Europe, in Africa, Caribbean, and, in Asia, China, so it's yeah, I mean, it's just been an interesting journey, something I've really enjoyed, um, and then have had to try and work out, how do you create something more than just giving away lots of your money to actually trying to get some of it back, and making it more of a business, and that's where Entrepreneurs in Action kind of moved away from working with lots of schools to helping companies with younger employees to help them both recruit young people into their organization. How do you retain those young people? How do you innovate with them, which we're doing, and also helping execs with the help of working with young people actually engage with them as consumers, but through the lens of them as young people, rather than through the biases that people hold of being over sort of 50, 60, trying to work, telling them what they want. So that's really where we're coming from.
And so what have young people taught you that like senior people miss, would you say? Like senior business people miss?
I think it's really interesting seeing what they do for clients. So what's young people taught me is there's no boundaries to the success and ideas and innovation and capacity of young people. I think we all have preconceptions of what young people can do, and the way in which many organizations are structured, it's structured around you do X for this number of years before you've got a good idea, because you can't have another good idea without, making the tea for X number of years or doing a certain role. I think what's really been great is where you've got, through our programs, young people, whether they're in an organization solving business problems for that organization. And we've worked with big global brands where senior leadership have shared through us a business challenge that they're facing. And we've got in and worked with graduates and apprentices through our ICANN model, which stands for the Internal Consulting Answer. And they have actually nailed the brief and come up with the solution and presented that back to the senior execs. And senior execs have said, wow, we didn't see that, and you guys have. And I think that's, one of the biggest opportunities, and why we still see organizations working with us, is that, how do you bridge that talent and knowledge gap with young people who are in your organization that previously you never asked any questions of. You just felt that everybody in the C-suite have all the answers. So, getting those young people to surprise and take senior leaders out of their comfort zone is very is brilliant. That's what we love to see.
Yeah, it must be a lot of fun actually.
Yeah.
Rewarding. So do you think like Gen Z, Gen Alpha are actually hugely different, to our generation, or do you think that's just sort of mainly blown up by the press and kind of exaggerated?
I think that the press give the younger generations a hard time. There's a lot of stereotypes.
Yeah.
Snowflake, this, a lot of
Live at home too long. And,
yeah. But, and when you look at the world that young people are growing up in now, it's nothing like in the world I grew up in. It's nothing like the world that you grew up in. And there are far more challenges, far more variables. Things are moving far more quickly. And they've got there are far less opportunities in some respects and more opportunities in others. So if you look at it, if you think about buying a home when you were 21, 22, 23, in your early or mid-20s, it was achievable. It was achievable. If you think about jobs now, you're sitting here as somebody that is a beneficiary of a phone call and somebody created an opportunity for you, made time, life goes on. And you're doing that now in your thing, right? But I think that there are less, it's more competition. So, it was the EU, but now internationally, lots of people are being recruited. So it's more competition for jobs. There are less jobs and then more competition for it. And then you've got AI, which is also disrupting your world. And then you've got social media. It's so many variables that we just didn't have. Competing for our time, impacting, mental health in a way that, we didn't see.
Agreed.
And also the education around mental health, we didn't have, you toughed everything out, right? That was it, Now kids are being educated about their mental health. It's part of their vocabulary in a way they enter the workplace. So, though that's a positive and can be a bit challenging for young people as they go through the workplace, but there are huge opportunities. AI opens up huge opportunities, access to global markets through technology in ways that we never had.
Yeah.
You look at some of the things you can do with China from the UK.
Oh, yeah.
You can be a global manufacturer, have it all packed and sent out from China. And I was just on a train and a friend of mine talking about their daughter, and she's an influencer. She's earning money around the world. She's living in different parts of the world, earning money through selling her content. And so we don't need ITV or Channel 4. We've got lots of content creators and people are buying up into her content where it's completely open. Anybody can be a content creator, an influencer, if you're doing it. And I think that's amazing. So I think there's huge amounts of opportunities for young people. And yes, you're not going to have a job for 40 years in the same way that many people in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s had. But there are lots of opportunities that this world is creating for you.
There's also quite a dark side, though, isn't there? As you just touched on with the mental health thing, like there's a thing about the manosphere.
Yeah.
It rears its ugly head more time and time again. Louis Theroux did a very good documentary on it recently. Absolutely terrifying watch, as a parent, watching that, understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
To millions of young men, especially. I feel like it's important to counter that as much as we can, like you do in your programs, right?
Yeah.
And I do with my interns, or whatever it might be, because it's a real poisonous kind of dark hole of the internet there.
No, you're right. And then I feel that so many young people are growing up in a screen-based relationship when we grew up in a community-based, whether it was team or your group of guys.
Yeah.
But, if you were upstairs in your room, the best you could do was either watch television or, listen to the radio.
Totally.
Right? And with your phone, mum and dad knew who was calling you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There was one way in, one way out, right? Now, and this is the challenge for parents, you've got one telephone which has thousands of outlets. And whatever you type into Google will share with you. So in the old days, you might type, if you typed in depression, you couldn't type it in, right? You had to read something in a book or,
encyclopedia.
Encyclopedia, but you had to go and search that knowledge and physically find it. Now I think that there's so much information, and the dark side is you can type something in which could be considered dark, and the way algorithms work, it's a gotcha moment.
Yeah. Oh,
it's like, great. So whereas one person could be talking nonsense to you, they will give you 1,000 inputs a week, messaging, videos, everything around that one thing. So it's very difficult to close the door on it, right? Because it's like you've let it out, and it's like, oh, you're interested in this, right? it's coming with the algorithms. And I think that, and with AI, how that algorithm's going to be accelerated, I just don't know, right? But we never really had that battle on our mind.
No.
Right? And what is interesting is that young people are becoming consumers younger and younger. And so the consumption strategy for, you know, you look at Roblox or Fortnite, is that parents, you sell down to influence up, right?
Yeah.
So the parents get a call from Jack, and Jack says, "Oh, I need some more skins for this game. I need that." Right. So all of a sudden, parents are paying for it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what's interesting about Gen Alpha is also that they've started their own side hustles. So imagine a 13, 12-year-old is making money and saying, "I don't need mum and dad to pay for this. I'll pay for it myself."
Yeah.
So they're interacting with the financial system at a much younger age.
Vinted is a good example.
Vinted, yeah. Right? And the thing is, we're buying the gifts. They're like, "Oh, I'll just sell this skin that you bought me and make some money." But they're creating a marketplace.
Yeah.
Right? And it's really interesting to what that means for employers, what that means for business, and what it means for entrepreneurship. And for me, that's one of the most exciting things out there, is that you've got young people of all of these platforms on the positive, but that, you know, there's a lot of dark stuff that goes on, and that you've got people who can capitalize and target people at their vulnerable times.
Yeah, very much so.
And take them on a horrible journey.
So your major report you've just co-written with Capita, Entrepreneurs in Action, and Capita report on pensions, but obviously it feels a lot wider than just about pensions, doesn't it? It's about housing, it's about the world of work, it's about how young people feel about the future. You know, because obviously these days, all these things you've just mentioned, Vinted and, you know, selling things on drop shipping, you know, and crypto, of course, and all the rest of it. So, you know, what stood out for you in the report as your kind of takeaways?
So many takeaways, Nick. It's been a fascinating report to partner with Capita on. And so it's savings, investments and pensions, because all three go hand in hand when we were doing the research. And what we tried to do is look at it from the perspective of Gen Alpha, and Gen Alpha are joining the workplace this year at 16, but they go right the way down to 2. We didn't interview any 2-year-olds, which would have been interesting for a report. But I think we did interview state school and independent in old money, 4th years, 3rd and 4th years, but in new money, sort of year 9, year 10. And we saw a difference between how some of those young people looked at money, savings and investments. And there is a growing divide between how these young people have been introduced to money and how they think about money. And I thought from the independent schools that we worked with, trust fund, advice from mum and dad. I met the most amazing crypto trader who was 14, and he's going to be a superstar trader. I mean, if I was at Chelsea Football Club, I'd put £100,000 down and say, we want this guy in 10 years' time. But what's interesting is that there is a democratization of information and investment opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the stats, I think 25% of Gen Z have traded crypto versus 1% of baby boomers.
Wow.
Right? And Generation Alpha, that's growing, right? Because it's their currency. And then if you look at how fractionalization and tokenization is going, things and investments that were only available to the very rich are starting to be available and accessible. And with the way in which social media influencers, financial influencers are going, a lot of this information is filtering down to young people so they can make more and more investment choices. So I think it's been really interesting looking at what's going on. So from a positive side, there are more opportunities to make money. Vinted, we've mentioned, they're trading active, some of them active day traders. There's information, there's charts and things that they could get involved in. And then on the other side, that's quite difficult is, getting on the housing ladder is really tough. And now 57% of Gen Z require the bank of mum and dad to get them on a housing ladder.
Yeah.
Now, from a social mobility perspective, that requires mum and dad to be in a position to put 58k on the table for you to get your house.
Per child.
Right? Per child. Right? In the old days, that wasn't the case. And so from a social mobility perspective, it was more level. You could get a first house in London, for just over, not maybe a house flat, just over 100k.
Yeah.
You can't do that now, right? So it concerns me that we're going to have more polarization of wealth. And then because people who can afford it will help their children on the property ladder. And those who want to make a deposit, I think they now require 8 times more money than they required in 1995 to put a deposit on.
Wow.
Right? That's crazy.
And that's why 40% now of kids in their late 20s still live with their parents. Whereas
Absolutely.
It used to be 20% 20 years ago.
Yeah. So it's a growing percentage living with their parents up until the age of 30. And that's for those children who are in an environment that their parents allow them to stay.
Yeah.
Right? As we know, and it's not just a class thing, but there are many young people who are displaced due to just not having those relationships with their parents. And I think as we go on, there are going to be more parents who are, unemployed and unable to keep mortgage payments going, and what that means for their children as repossessions and such things grow. And, and I've seen it also with rentals where, rents are kept on increasing, especially with where interest rates went. And people who've lived in a house rented for 5-10 years, bringing up a family, a landlord's now saying, I've got to increase the rent. And so it has a massive impact on a family in that, you may have been able to rent a 3-bed house, and now because the landlord wants to bring that to market rent, that gives you a 1-bed apartment and you've still got 3 kids. So I think there's some growing uncertainty and heartache for young people, and disruption in time.
So the old deal was work steadily, buy a house, build a pension, and build towards, life savings and a retirement, I guess. And you think a lot of them question that now, really, or?
Yeah, look, I think what's interesting from the, talking to young people, and it was great to be doing some of the research and really getting under the bonnet with them, is they don't trust the system.
Yeah.
Right? They're not relying on the system to look after them, right? They are, 61% of Gen Z have a side hustle.
Yeah, really?
Right? So you've got me 9 to 5, but 6 to 11, I'm earning my other income to keep me either to save towards my deposit or to pay my rent, right? Or to pay for my concert ticket. You are one source of income, and I don't believe you that I'm going to have a job for 40 years, right?
Yeah.
So the other thing is that of that generation, the average job tenure for Gen Z is 13 months. And that means that they are constantly having to look for new jobs. And this is before AI is really kicking in the early careers market. So this generation are distrusting of institutions, and for some, they're distrusting of the government, seeing what's happened with their parents' pensions and some of the things that happened. If you're in an independent school and your parents have pulled you out because of a 20% addition of VAT, that has an impact on you. It has an impact on you, your day-to-day, but do you trust the system? And the system has been government. I think there's been a number of decisions where young people are saying, can we trust the government that there will be a pension for us when we turn, 68 now? Is it going to be 70? Is it going to be 75? So we're living longer. They're taking advantage of living longer. They want us to pay in more, right? So there is a real distrust of the system, and also a real independence that we need. Not me, I'm not young, but the young people need to own their future and invest and find ways of earning money.
Totally. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. You've been a great guest. I wanted to close with, what did your teacher tell you should apply to be when you told her, I think it was her.
It was her, yeah.
That you wanted to be an investment banker and an athlete, international athlete. What was her advice or suggestion?
Oh, that's a great question to end on. So, on the day of the results being handed out, I had a meeting with my accounts teacher, and she said to me, Derek, before we start the conversation, I just want to say I'm really surprised that you passed, but it's so good that you have, and I think I've got a job for you. And I said, miss, a job? That's really good. What job is it? She said, I think you should join the post office. And I said, what are you thinking, miss? Because I think you'd be a great postman. And I said, a postman? She goes, yes. And I said, why? She goes, you're very cheeky, you're very talkative, you're quite strong. I think you'd be great in the community delivering post. And I said, miss, I don't want to be a postman. She was really upset. She goes, what do you mean you don't want to be a postman? I said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a trader. And she said, a trader? Is that like Petticoat Lane, East Street Market? I said, no, I want to go to the stock market. And she fell off her chair. And I saw her white petticoat. She was quite a large lady.
Yeah.
And I saw the white petticoat. And she said to me, she got up and she was laughing. She goes, don't have ideas beyond your station, Derek. Be realistic. You are not going to be a trader. You can't do your maths right and accounting. And I thought that was really telling, that her view was that I can't be a trader. And, from there, obviously, I've gone on to do that. And that was one of my motivations around, working in education, is that there are so many dream crushers out there. And, a lot of teachers do some really great stuff, but young people's ambitions can be destroyed by a teacher who doesn't believe that you can do it. And I think the biggest thing, and it's a really positive thing to leave with, is that we've all got dreams, and with hard work, determination and dedication, we can fulfill it. And if we want to grow a stronger economy, it's about unlocking human potential. Human capital is our biggest asset in this country. So the more people who say no to what their teachers say occasionally and have bigger expectations and ambitions, the better it is for this country. So
totally agree.
That's what I say.
Good. Well, I think that's a good note to end on.
Thank you.